The Confession Letter of Winnie Ruth Judd, April 6, 1933, Thursday, 7 p.m. Attorney H.G. Richardson, Florence, Arizona. Dear Mr. Richardson, I am writing the absolute truth of this case, in full confidence that you will use it as you see fit in your best judgment. Mr. Richardson, I have full confidence in you and trust you. This is my first and only confession of the case of the homicide of Agnes Ann LeRoi and Hedwig Samuelson. We three girls were close friends. Ann and I were closely associated with our work at the office. I had been keeping company with Jack Halloran until my husband returned. I saw him no more until one day I introduced him to Ann LeRoi in February. He started being a constant visitor at her home. I made her promise she would not let Mr. Halloran know that my husband and I lived next door for fear my husband, whom I really loved, would learn about my previous friendship with him. For months we were friends, Halloran visiting them 3 or 4 times a week. My husband, the 2 girls, and myself eating together, playing bridge together, but my avoiding running into Halloran during a sickness the girls had. When I was taking care of them, Halloran found out we lived next door. He became a friend of my husband's and a frequent visitor at our home. Ann was obliged to go to her home in Oregon during the summer. I helped her financially. Halloran confided in my husband and I know he helped her and we were glad. My husband located a temporary position. Sammy and I lived together. I took care of her. Halloran was frequent visitor. Ann returned from Oregon in September. The 3 of us were living together. Never had I felt in the least jealous of Ann until after her return from Oregon. I had denied myself necessities to help her during her illness that summer, loaned her money, was happy that Jack sent her $300 during the summer and Sammy had denied herself to help Ann. But when Ann returned, instead of using the money given and loaned her to pay for her operation etc., she came back with a gorgeous wardrobe and far in debt. We 3 girls lived together. I was having a struggle to pay my bills. My mother was ill. I sent all I could home. I worked hard in the office. Tired at night I would come home. Ann usually had dinner ready, so it was my share of the work to do the dinner dishes. Halloran would usually arrive about this time. Ann all fresh and chiffon and rested. Ann was used to the world. I truly was not. Halloran was the only man I had gone with since my marriage. I was ashamed of things I had done. I could not openly compete with her. I was married and ashamed too. Day after day she lorded it over me, always smiling and fresh and sweet, well knowing she was hurting me with her taunts. Many evenings Ann would kiss Halloran, caress him in our presence. Then after he was gone gloat over not caring a thing for him but merely working him for money. God knows this different with me. Secretly Halloran had made love to me at a time when I was most discouraged in life. I had given him everything but truly he had never given me anything. I had never sold my love. It was not what Halloran did but the continual taunts made by Ann which drove me beside myself. Going back over my life, I have not been of a jealous disposition. For instance, the Hull case when I was a child. I loved my chum Beulah, still do, who took Hull away from me. Never until Hull's cousin taunted me did I lose control of myself and do most insane things. I could not stand taunts. I just went crazy. To get away from Ann, her taunts, I truly tried to get possession of myself. I was cruelly made fun of by Ann to Halloran in my presence. So, I finally moved. Halloran came to my house 10 out of the 14 nights I had been away from the girls. Those taunts kept me awake. I could not sleep. I cried. I even prayed. I wrote my parents to please come to me. I was losing my mind. Wild ideas kept me awake. I took sleeping sedatives. Luminal. I wrote doctor my nerves were breaking. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I loved Ann still but those taunts. I would take more medicine to quiet my nerves. Cried to please get things off my mind. To sleep. On Saturday preceding this 4 hours, I sobbed. Something kept pounding after me. I took more luminal. I had just gone to sleep when about 2 a.m. Halloran drove up in a taxi dead drunk and brought the taxi driver into the house. I ordered him out and begged Halloran to please not come at those hours. He told me all right he would to Ann's. On Wednesday night, again I could not sleep. I went to bed. Those taunts possessed me. My mind was wild. I got the gun. Saturday, April 8th, 3 p.m. I told my next door neighbor if anyone, I was expecting Jack, came, tell him where I had gone. Oh yes, before this, on Wednesday night at 5 p.m. Ann and I were actually discussing her moving in with me if I got a place large enough when my parents came out. Mr. Gregory came and took me to look at the houses, then over to have dinner with his son and wife. As long as my mind was occupied with my office work, or social things, or study I was all right, but at night when I tried to rest I could not. These wild ideas, those taunts. I could not sleep. I was losing weight. My tuberculosis was active. I was running a temperature and my head really cramped. It was so tired and I could not sleep. After being at Mr. Gregory's for dinner I went home, went to bed, and finally got the gun. Told my neighbor where I was going and went over to Anne's. I waited next door, my stomach shook inside. I was going to shoot through the window. I started crying so hard I turned and went home, and Miss Marshall told me Jack had been there. I went to bed, took another luminol and cried myself to sleep. At about 12 or so Jack Halloran came again, walked right into the house drunk with a drunken friend, Mr. Ryan. I got up. Ryan staggered over to me, said something dirty I was too much dazed to understand or half asleep, and threw $2 down the front of my pajama blouse. I flew in rage and finally Jack calmed me down and apologized. We took Ryan home to the LeRoi Hotel. Jack and Ryan started a fight in the lobby. I was sitting in the car in the front, then Jack took me home and stayed with me. I was deathly sick that night. I talked a long time to Jack, told him I could not sleep, even told him I went to Anne's that night and didn't go in but turned around and came back. I told Jack a lot of my worries that night. On Thursday night at 4 p.m. Jack called me at the office. He and Ryan were drunk and singing over the phone. Jack asked me to meet Lucille Moore that night, or rather to arrange so he could meet her that night, which I did. He said, I have bought a new radio for Sammy and Ryan and I will take it out to her. Then we will be past your house at 6. Will that be okay? He came past my house at 6. We went over to Lucille Moore's house. He then wanted us to go with him over to Anne's and pick up this Mr. Ryan and Thompson and have dinner. I begged Jack to go on over there and get the men and come back because I truly did not want Anne to know I was out with them, and especially did not want Dr. Brinkerhoff, one of the new doctors at the office, to know I was with Jack. Dr. Brinkerhoff was at Anne's for dinner that night. Dr. Brinkerhoff at that time had all the respect in the world for me. He connected me as a new person in the clinic on where to get different office supplies, and he knew I was married, my husband a doctor, and that I was working because my husband was sick. This is truly the reason I did not want to go with Jack over there but instead wanted him to get the men and come back for us. He insisted that if I would save time by going along he would park the car in front of the house and not let them know we were waiting outside. Well, to make it short, he told them I was outside. Anne came out as I've related before many times. We went, that is Jack, Lucille, and the other 2 men, to my house for dinner. It was not a wild party. The men, Jack and Mr. Ryan, got to talking religion. I told them sometimes I thought although my family was Protestant, I might find relief in becoming a Catholic. Jack picked up the bottle of luminol on my dresser and said, "Are you or have gone to taking this dope?" I said, "Yes, I take it to sleep. I don't know what is the matter with me sometimes. I think I am losing my mind." I started crying and Ryan sat down on the bed. I again said I sometimes think if I would become a Catholic my mind might get at rest. I wish I could talk my whole soul out to some priest for relief. I want to be good. I want to do right, but I worry. I can't sleep until it seems I will lose my mind. What lies the newspapers have told about that night, no human ever was going through such a turmoil of mind. I was honest. I did want relief, to cry my soul out to someone. All I could think of was a priest for relief. He would perhaps calm whatever possessed my mind, give me relief. The relief I sought on drugging myself to unconsciousness with luminol. Friday noon Anne and I had lunch together over at my house. As long as my mind was occupied, insane thoughts never creeped in. But when I went to bed or awakened in the morning it was a fight in mind. Anne and I were happy, ate together, went back to the clinic swinging hands. Anne did invite me to join in a game of bridge with Sammy, Evelyn, and her that night. Anne was in my office several times on Friday. Dr. Baldwin hated Anne and told me to tell her to stay out. I would not because I couldn't hurt her feelings. Yet at night wild things possessed my mind. Friday night I expected Jack. He did not come. I went to bed. Again, I could not sleep. I got up, went over to Anne's house. My brain whirling. I was so excited I was panting for breath. Never did I have the slightest dream of hurting Sammy. She simply never entered my mind, except to get Anne. Stop those taunts so I could sleep. Nothing more did I think of. I took the gun and a knife. How I would do it I was not sure. But I had no intention of harming Sammy. Jack was as intimate with Sammy as Anne. But it was Anne's cruel taunts that haunted me. Evelyn was just leaving when I arrived. I hid in the house next door. Anne and Sammy returned to the bedroom. Here was when the conversation took place about Anne going to tell Jack that Lucille Moore had syphilis. the criticism of my introducing Jack to her, etc. After they retired, I went to the back door, laid the knife and my shoes outside the door, then crept in the unlocked front door. The porch light was on. A police patrol car was parked down the road. I sat down on the couch in the semi-dark room and soon fell to sleep clutching the gun. I awakened. Sammy had gone to the bathroom. That insane desire, that power, lead me on. I started for Anne. My stomach was turning inside out, really twitching, jumping out of me. Outside not a tremor, but my stomach jumping like convulsions. I retreated, curled up and went to sleep again. Dr. Rainey's, I think it was, car drove into Dr. Salt's driveway. I went back to sleep again. Oh, again and again all night. I don't know how many times. Sammy kept going to the bathroom. I started for that bedroom and retreated each time, so exhausted I immediately went to sleep. Morning. Heard the milkman. Sammy went to the bathroom again. I started to call her. Tell her I was there. I really did. Then I began shaking inside and remembered what I had come to do, so this time I crept past the bathroom door. Shot Anne. It was a low shot. Sammy called. What fell, Anne? I was hurrying past the door. Sammy came out, demanded to know what was the matter. I was limp. She completely took the gun from my hands. I was non-resistant. I said, Sammy, I am crazy. I have lost my mind. Give that gun and I will blow my brains out right here in this door. She held the gun and said, you get out of here right this minute. I honestly truly do not know what all was said. I remembered running out of the house into the garage. I tried to shut the door. Sammy lost her slipper out there. I then picked up the knife and went back after her with the knife. As I grabbed for the gun, I stabbed her in the shoulder. The fight with Sammy in that breakfast room door. Her own finger on the trigger when the shot went through her chest. Our fight is all about as I have always related. She shot me through the hand as I grabbed for the gun. The gun jammed. We fell to the floor. Struggled and I finally got the gun and shot her, and in the wild state I really do not remember where in the head. I then took off my clothes and put on a pair of pajamas. I pulled Sammy into the bathroom. I cleaned up the floor. I pulled in the trunk from the garage. It was now about 6:30 or 7 a.m. The family in the house south, 2 men and a woman, were in the yard. One of men and the woman got in a car and drove away. I did not look in the trunk. I had no idea what was in it. I was too crazy to know if I had looked. I tugged and pulled and finally got Anne from the bed into the trunk. Now it doesn't sound possible, but this all took about 2 hours. I left for the office. It was about 9 when I called the office and told them I would be late. I arrived at the office between 9:30 or 10, nearer to 9:30. At about 10 or 10:15 I called Dr. Percy Brown, told him I was Anne and would not be there for work that day. Some patients noticed it, others did not. Everyone questioned me where Anne was. Mrs. Percy Brown made 2 trips to the girl's house that day. I never knew when she would discover things. I had pulled the trunk with Anne's body into the living room, but the trunk was unlocked. Sammy was on the bathroom floor all day Saturday. When I went from Anne's directly to the office, I carried the knife and the gun and pair of pajamas with me to put them in Anne's locker. It is strange. The things which have convicted me were positive lies. This all happened in the morning. Jean Cunningham and Mrs. McFadden's stories were not true, and that Bessie Lepker was a purged testimony from beginning to end. My lawyers were honest in an insanity defense, yet a jury was so sure Halloran was mixed up in this they voted the death penalty to force me to tell on him. The Mrs. Reed who says she saw me at 2:30 on Saturday lies, as does her small daughter who says she saw me at 3 p.m. or 5 p.m. at 2:30. I wrote a letter to my husband from the office. I did not even go for a bite to eat until 3 o'clock or so, and I stayed in my office or did not close the office until 4 p.m. I then took the bag home with me with the gun, knife, pajamas and dress. I fed my cat and went back to the 2929 and 2nd Street house at around 6 p.m. I really had nothing definite in my mind, no plans made. In fact, except for an irresistible impulse to get Anne, I had no other plans. I entered the house through the bathroom window, getting a chair from next door to climb in. I pulled the trunk back into the hall, tried to lift Sammy into it, but that was utterly impossible. I couldn't possibly lift her. She was too heavy. Her body was stiff. I then got 2 cheap knives from the kitchen and severed her body into portions I could lift. I was hours doing this and then inch by inch pulling the trunk back into the living room. That trunk weighed 420 pounds. 2 baggage men couldn't budge it, took 3 to move it. Yet in my maniacal condition I had superhuman strength. When I had done this without looking at my purse to see that I had not funds with which to go to Los Angeles, I had a little over $5, less than $9. I phoned the Lightning Delivery, called a taxi, and in a summer dress started for the station. The luggage men, after taking the trunk to the truck, informed me it was too heavy to ship as luggage. I told them to take the trunk to the 1130 Brill Street then, which they did, and on the porch at Brill Street, I did just as the luggage men said, stood staring into space wild-eyed, never heeding their advice to move until they moved me themselves. Before leaving 2929 and 2nd Street with the baggage men, I did as they said about the lights, telling them they were off, switching them on, then saying, "Oh, they are off," and switching them off again. I also left the mattress from Anne's bed rolled up right there in front of the baggage men at 2nd Street, blood soaked in the living room. When they left me at 1130 Brill Street, after placing the trunk in the bedroom, I went back to 2929 and 2nd Street, turned the hose on the porch, went in the house, got the blood-soaked mattress and carried it over to a vacant lot at the corner of 3rd and Pinchot, where I struck perhaps 5 matches to it, but saw my car coming, the car I had ridden out on, and ran to catch it. It was the last car on Saturday night. There was a gardener saw me get off that car. Saturday night I was dead in mind and body and slept with the trunk the baggage men had placed there at the foot of my bed until noon. Sunday noon, I started getting ready to go to Los Angeles again. I opened the trunk, washed out some towels on top. I could not wring them dry with one hand. I transferred portions of Sammy's body to the smaller trunk and suitcase. Then I washed the gun in the lavatory, and while it was underwater a bullet remaining in the gun went off and the lead mashed in a sheet, which part of it I threw in the toilet, the other went down the basin. Sunday night about 4 p.m. I then borrowed money with which to go to Los Angeles. Although in a crazed frame of mind, I had started the night before with less than $9. From here on I think most everything has already been known. I still went to Los Angeles in a white silk dress, no coat. I hid in the only store where I was known. I handed a woman in the waiting room a suitcase containing a portion of Sammy and a hat box with the gun, giving her my name. I then went to the sanatorium where I was known, and went to bed and slept all Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday, and most of Thursday night, coming into Los Angeles on Friday when I surrendered. And now, my dear Mr. A.O. Wilson, you have labored so long and faithfully for me, and you too, Mr. Irwin Cars, Mr. Arthur Verge, and Mr. Howard G. Richardson. I thank you from the bottom of my heart and sincerely hope that someday you all shall be well repaid for your efforts in my behalf. And now, as to all my former and previous attorneys, I hereby forbid you and each of you from divulging or talking at any time any information on facts which you ever learned about my case from myself or anyone, either verbally or by writings. Most sincerely, Winnie Ruth Judd.